Ford cancelling plans to import its Ford Active model from China. The company is blaming the trade war. We have auto team leader Craig Trudell, who broke this story. Craig, just tell us more about the story for a start.
Right, so Ford has been shifting its plans for the Focus and its cars for several years now. So it started with a plan to move them down to Mexico. We all remember that Donald Trump was not a big fan of that plan. It changed plans and said, okay, we're actually going to make some vehicles in China, actually, the Focus Active crossover. So the Focus compact car that we're familiar with now, that's going away. This crossover was going to be coming to market, but it was going to be coming from China. But because of this trade war between the U.S. and China, in which Trump has decided to put a 25% tariff on vehicles coming in from that market, the business case no longer makes sense. The company says they were only going to sell about 50,000 units a year, maybe even less than that, and it just didn't make sense to follow through with that plan, given the low volume and given just how much the business case was undermined by these.
Given the low volume, I mean, is this a little performative? Couldn't Ford have just done this anyway? I mean, you know, on a regular day, they might have made any number of business decisions like this, but because it seems like a tariff day, does it help Ford?
Well, it's hard to say whether they're kind of making an excuse here, but I will say this, that you know, they have stated clearly, look, we're going to get back to 10% profit margins in the U.S. Or in North America, excuse me. And for them to do that, it did not make a whole lot of sense to bring this vehicle to market with these tariffs, because it definitely would not have been profitable here. It probably was going to be fairly slim profit-wise already in terms of the margins for that vehicle. And what they've said is that they're not even going to look into building it here in the U.S. For this market. So you know, I think they already had the EcoSport. That's a smaller crossover that would have sort of competed with this. And you've seen GM take a similar tact where they have a Buick model that they import from China, where they've said, look, it's, you know, a 40, 50,000 maybe vehicle that, you know, we can just import from China, where, you know, there's a heck of a lot more demand for it. Makes a better business sense for that to just be imported here.
What is China doing to prepare for any tariffs that might come? I mean, this could be a golden opportunity for China, right?
It could be. I do think that there's very limited amounts of plans for China to import many vehicles into this market. I do think that those plans, as we've seen today, are compromised in a significant way. But there is I do think that this you know, can be viewed in China as sort of fodder for how you know, there is sort of a negative impact from this trade war that the U.S. is in, much as Ford is trying to downplay how many vehicles it was going to sell with this particular model. Those are 50,000 units that Ford is no longer going to be able to sell, and that's not nothing. So there is fallout here. Right.
Now, Craig, what else does Ford make in China in small batches that it could maybe bring back to the U.S. or go somewhere else with?
So interestingly, Ford, it's roughly 95% of the vehicle sales they have here in the U.S. are made in North America. So they have very limited imports. And they're actually maybe best positioned if this trade war continues, if it escalates. We obviously saw yesterday in Donald Trump's interview with John Micklethwait at Bloomberg News that he was not viewing the EU's offer to take tariffs down to zero as good enough. And that could have some impact on Ford and their Transit Connect. It's a small commercial van that they import into this market. But I don't foresee them trying to import vehicles from China anytime soon, especially under the current state of affairs tariff-wise.